Okay, let's get right into it. We're going to talk about something that is so personal and honestly can be incredibly painful. We're diving into the psychology of why a friend might just suddenly cut you off. And I'm telling you, the reason is probably not what you think.
I mean, really think about that for a second. Have you ever had this happen? One day you're in it deep, sharing everything, laughing, planning your futures together, and then the next day it's just radio silence. Nothing. No explanation, no big blow up fight, just this huge empty space where that person used to be. If you've been there, you know just how jarring that is.
It's such a specific kind of gut punch, right? The not knowing, the lack of closure, it is agonizing. It can send your mind into a total spiral, replaying every single moment, trying to figure out what went wrong. If you've ever felt that deep confusion and that very, very real pain, then this is for you.
So, what do we do to cope with that silence? Well, our brains start doing what they do best. They start writing stories to fill in the blanks. And you know what? Usually those stories are not very kind, either to the friend who left or a lot of the time to ourselves. Let's dig into the stories we tell. So, the first story, the go to narrative, is on the left. It's the easy one. They're just a cruel, selfish person. It makes them the villain, plain and simple, and it gives us a target for our anger. But what if the reality is something more like what's on the right? What if it was never about trying to hurt you, but was actually about them trying to save themselves from something they just couldn't handle anymore? And okay, if we're not blaming them, well, then we almost always turn the blame inward. We're convinced we're the problem. We start combing through every text, every call, searching for that one terrible thing we must have said or done. But what if it wasn't about a single mistake at all? What if it's just the quiet, inevitable result of two people who started to grow on completely different paths?
All right, so if it's not always pure malice and it's not always some huge mistake you made, then what is actually going on under the surface? Let's get into the hidden psychology here because this is where the real understanding starts to click into place. Now, this is a really crucial concept right here: protective boundaries. We tend to think of boundaries as small things, like saying no when you're asked for a favor. But sometimes, the entire friendship itself becomes the thing a person has to say no to. It feels like an attack from the outside, but for them, it's actually a defense. It can be a final, drastic act of self-preservation when they feel like they've run out of any other options.
Wow. I mean, this quote just says it all, doesn't it? When you read that, you can feel the absolute weight of that decision. This completely reframes the person who ended things. They're not some cold-hearted villain anymore. They're someone who felt like they were drowning, and they had to let go of the rope just to get their head above water. It's truly a survival instinct.
You know, that idea of survival leads us directly into this next point, which is all about personal growth. It's the one thing you can count on in life. We all change. And as we evolve, the very foundation of our relationships has to evolve too. And sometimes they just can't hold the weight of who we're becoming. And here's one of the quietest friendship killers of all: value misalignment. Think about it. Maybe when you first met, you both valued the same things, going out, having adventures. But over time, maybe one of you starts to value quiet nights and stability, while the other is still on that same adventure path. Neither one is wrong, but that common ground, the thing that connected you so deeply, has just eroded away, making that deep connection feel strained or even impossible to keep up. Okay, so let's pull all these ideas together. Let's try to reframe what it really means when a friendship ends like this. So, suddenly. It's really about moving away from that simple, painful story of betrayal and toward a more compassionate and, honestly, a more complex truth. So, what's the new story we can tell ourselves? Well, it's this: the ending isn't a punishment, it's an act of preservation. That quiet, internal, personal growth can be a much more powerful force than any single fight. That letting go can actually be a sign of health. It's someone finally building a boundary that they desperately needed for themselves. And maybe most importantly, we have to let go of this simple good guy versus bad guy script. It's almost never that simple. So I really want to leave you with this one final thought to mull over. What if we looked at these incredibly painful endings not as a failure on anyone's part, but more like a graduation? A quiet and, yeah, sometimes a really sad sign that one or both of you has grown into the person you were always meant to become, even if that means you can't walk down the same path anymore.